Hi and welcome to the Powered YouTube channel. In this video we're going to have a look at how we can connect multiple fact tables in the same data model without having to duplicate dimensional tables. We're going to have a look at why the traditional method falls short, why we cannot connect multiple fact tables without having to duplicate dimensions, and how we can retain a star schema by using a bridge table. We're going to understand the bridge table concept, what it is and how it works, and how it can fit into a star schema. Then we're going to create this bridge table in Microsoft Fabric using a low-code, no-code option with the Dataflow. We're going to have a look at the best practices, some performance tuning, and we're going to also have a look at the catch using this kind of method, that maybe sometimes we need a many-to-many relationship, and why we have to use bidirectional relationships, which are not always the best practice. So we're also going to have a look at how scalable the solution is. Finally, we're going to wrap up the video. Thank you very much for watching and please subscribe for more. So to understand first what we're going to build in terms of data model, let's have a look at it. So right here we have 3 dimensions. So dim1, dimension 2, dimension 3. The top right corner, which are using a primary key to connect to the bridge cable, and then of course we have the date dimension. In this case we're using 2 fact tables, so we can kind of see a star schema, but it is not the classical star schema, because in the middle we don't have the fact table with the surrounding dimensions, but we also have fact tables acting outside the key center table, which will be our bridge table. So the bridge table basically is a table that acts as a connector that puts together all the keys of the different tables using relationships. And we create this bridge table by joining together using the keys that we have, only the keys between all the different tables, and creating one key table that can act as a bridge table between all the different dimensions and facts. So in theory, we would have one key fact table, as you can see on the bottom left, and surrounded with an orange thick line. We can see that we would have a primary fact table. In our case, the fact table, we're using the AdventureWorks data. That's a sample data set that can be found in the GitHub repository. I uploaded this data to Microsoft Fabric, OneLake. But the primary fact table contains, for the order line items, duplicates already, so we cannot use it really as a primary key, and therefore we have a many-to-many relationship between the bridge table and the fact table. But normally you would select one fact table as your primary fact table, and you would have primary values in that fact table, so that fact table would have a one-to-many relationship. You can see here there's a mistake, but the dimension tables don't actually have a many-to-many relationship. They have a one-to-many relationship. But of course all the relationships that you would see here would be bidirectional. So the steps to create the bridge table would be to use a Dataflow Gen 2. Of course, you can use a code-first solution such as PySpark or anything else that, like Spark SQL or even SQL if you want. But we're using just a low-code, no-code Dataflow Gen 2 in Microsoft Fabric. I have the data in a Lakehouse, so I've already created the delta tables. But we're going to select all the dimension tables and the fact tables in the Dataflow. Then we'll duplicate the main fact table query. So we'll create a duplicate of it, rename that query to the bridge table, and then union the other fact table to it, so that, for example, in my case, I will have internet sales and retail sales. And I want to connect these 2 fact tables, and we will have a look in the end, because we're going to be able to filter which one is internet sales and which one isn't, without actually needing any kind of magic, thanks to this bridge table. So our solution is going to be modeling rather than using DAX or using field parameters in this case. So we would have all the key columns that we select. So we join them together from the dimension from the dimension keys inside the fact tables and the fact tables, to be able to create that relationship between the bridge table and the dimensions. and the fact tables. And as I said, we will union the fact tables together. In my case, it will be a union, but of course, if because I have the same ID, so I have the same primary key ID, but if you have different primary key IDs for the different fact tables that have a key connector that you can use, then you would join them and create that extra column inside of that bridge table. There are different approaches of how you can create that bridge table. And finally, we need to remove any duplicates if necessary. Right, so diving straight into Microsoft Fabric, let's go through this tutorial, how to step-by-step create this bridge table. Then we'll create the data model, and then we'll have a look at the using Power BI desktop in this case, how we can create the relationships in the data model, and how we can use this data to actually get some value from our data and tell a story. So right here you can see my Lakehouse. I have created a Lakehouse called Lakehouse Multiple Fact. You can see that we have all the dimensions and the fact tables from the AdventureWorks CSV files. You can see here at the bottom, if I click files, you can see all the CSV files I have. It's not very big data. It's just for the purpose of this tutorial. So just to have a look at it. Okay, and then we will go to our workspace. So I've already created a workspace, and I've also created already a data flow, and the solution is already there, but we're going to recreate the solution so that we learn how we can create this bridge table step by step. So the first thing I do is click on new item. Yeah, so at the top left you can see new item, then there will be a blade that pops up. Here we can search for data flow. Yeah, we use the search field because we are not lazy, but we are being smart about it. So Dataflow Gen 2 just pops straight up. Yeah, we're not using scrolling around looking for it. You can see here there's also several sections where you get this data flow, which is a little bit silly, but you know, just choose one. So Dataflow Gen 2. Naming convention, DF for Dataflow, _, and then multiple fact table, MFT, and then I can add tutorial to it just for this. You can also enable a Git integration, which we won't do, but you know, you can as a best practice. So this creates our data flow. Also very nice to notice, we can now name the data flow before it gets created. So this was kind of an issue before. Okay, and then we have this data flow. Now we have to click on Get Data. Of course, we need the Dataflow Gen 2 to be able to connect to the Lakehouse. The Dataflow Gen 1, as I've seen by some research, is actually performing in some cases better than the Dataflow Gen 2. But the Dataflow Gen 2 is the one that we need to be able to query data inside of Fabric. So let's click Get Data. You'll get a little pop-up window. And there's new sources. So here on the top right, you can see there's a View More button, and we will click View More to get the overview of all the connectors we have. There are a lot of connectors that come out of the box with the Microsoft Fabric solution, but we're going to click on Microsoft Fabric. And then we're going to click on Lakehouse. Okay, so by clicking on Lakehouse, we can now select what kind of authentication we want. I'm going to use the default connection. Click Next. And now we get a view at all our workspaces that we have. Okay, so even though this says Lakehouse, it's finding all the Lakehouses inside of the workspaces that we have. In this case, I'm going to open up the multiple fact workspace and going to click Lakehouse multiple fact. Open this up, and now we select all the tables that we want inside of our Lakehouse. Okay. In this case, you can see I already have a bridge table, which we're going to create now. So let's ignore that. But I've decided that I want to create the data model using the dim customer dimension table, dim date for the date dimension. I want the dim product for the product, and the sales territory. Okay, so we have 4 dimension tables, and then we will have 2 fact tables. So the fact internet sales and the fact reseller sales. Okay, and so what the end goal is, what the story we want to tell is going to be, is that we want to differentiate how much is our internet sales and our reseller sales, and do an analysis by combining two fact tables, which is a very common use case scenario, because unfortunately you don't always have the magical star schema that is a best practice in reality. Yeah, in reality we often have multiple fact tables, and we don't want to duplicate any dimensions, so that's what we're going to look at now. All right. So as I mentioned, the steps, yeah, the first thing we do is duplicate the fact table. Any of them will do. I will duplicate fact internet sales. Okay, and then I will rename this. Okay, so click rename, and I will call this tutorial underscore bridge table. Okay, just very straightforward. Click enter when you're done. And now we are going to select all the columns that we want. Okay, so I click on choose columns. I deselect, again, more efficient, deselect and select what you want. And because we have the customer dimension, we need customer key. We have order date key. So I specifically picked one kind of date as a dimension. Yeah, so if you want to understand the difference between order and due date, there's a different approach for that without any complex kind of DAX. But we also want the product key because we have the product dimension, and then we need the territory, so sales territory key. Okay, so these are the 4 dimensions that we have. And now for the fact table, we want the primary key, which is going to be sales order number, I believe. So let's have a look. Yeah, sales order number, there it is. Click OK. And that should leave us with 5 different columns, and they're all IDs. So that's perfect. You can also see that they're all numeric. The only one that's not numeric, it's a string, is the sales order number. All right, so now we also need the fact reseller keys, right? Because we now have the IDs for internet sales, I believe, and we now need to union the data from fact reseller. So we can, in this case, we can use union because I know that the fact reseller sales table has exactly the same IDs. If it didn't, we would have to use, for example, a join, use a primary key that we want, and join it together, and then we would have a different approach. But in this case, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to click append queries. I'm going to select the table to append. So this will be fact reseller, and click OK. And now it will append all the columns. Yeah. So we will now kind of have a mess because we'll have many blank columns. So now again, we will have to do the same step again, is select all the columns that we actually want. So, you know, let's again click choose columns, and we select product key, order date key, sales territory key, and customer key, and sales order number. Okay, so the first 5, and then the rest I don't want. I just need the IDs, yeah, for this bridge table. All right, and that's pretty much it. We have now the bridge table. Staging is enabled, I believe. That's fine. And then we choose as a destination the Lakehouse. Okay, so the destination is important because if we don't choose the destination, it will simply load into nowhere, which is pointless. Okay, so then again, choose the workspace, the Lakehouse that we have. Yeah, in this case, we don't have to open up the Lakehouse, so we save a bit of load time. We just click the database Lakehouse symbol, and tutorial bridge table is fine as a name. Click next. Okay, so it will take the name that of the query by default. So if your query is called query 1, then you're gonna have to rename the table. So as a best practice, rename it before you even get there. Click on save settings, and now the next thing we will have to do is simply publish it. Okay, the cool thing is all of these other tables won't load, yeah, because we haven't defined a destination for it. So pretty easy, straightforward. Let's click publish, and this should now load and refresh the data that we want. Okay, as you can see here, that's the data flow. df underscore mft for multiple fact table, tutorial, and as you can see, it's refreshing. All right, so our data flow is done. Let's go into the Lakehouse and have a look at the bridge table. So we're going to have to refresh the Lakehouse. That's the bottom on the button on the top left. You kind of have to refresh it twice for it to work properly. And you can see at the bottom we have the tutorial bridge table. Click on that, it will load the Delta Parquet table. This is a test, a trial version, so it won't be performing as well as a production capacity. But you can see here that we have all our 5 key columns. Now we have a problem because we can only see the sales order number, but we still can't differentiate between which one is actually internet sales and which one is reseller sales. So or retail sales, I think. So let's go into the back into the data flow and adjust something. Okay, we could have done this before, but we want to see the step. So let's go to multiple fact tables again, to our workspace, open up the data flow. Okay, and we will add to fact internet sales a column. So we click add column, and it's just going to be like a flag. Okay, so it's going to be a sales type. So we have to let this load first, but it would be a custom column that we add. So we add a custom column, click custom column on the top left, and call this sales type. Okay, it is important that it does not have any spaces in the title, and it is also important that we have the exact same name for the reseller sales. Okay, so this will be internet sales. Okay, now we just copy this name. Date type will be string, so we click on text and then we click OK. All right, and we do the same for, so let's just let this load for a second and see if it's successful. Let's give it a second. Okay, we can see this worked. And then we do the same for fact reseller sales. So again, any kind of filters instead of field parameters that you want, we do this here. Click again, add custom column. I will copy paste the name that we have here, and here it will be reseller sales. Okay, and then again type text. It is also important that the data type is the same for the union so that it works properly. Okay, so for a union to work well, the data type has to be the same and the column name has to be the same. The order doesn't really matter. Okay, so you can see here we have on the right hand side, you can see that we have the applied steps. Okay, and you can see here we twice have choose columns. So if we click on this icon here on the on this, it's kind of difficult to see, but on this little settings icon, so I click on that step, the first choose columns, I click on the icon and then I can adjust it. So now we have a sales type, of course, that I want in my data. Okay, and I cannot find it, so let me search type. Okay, I cannot find it, so let me I think I might have to refresh this. Let me just see if reseller worked as well. Let me go to the right and we can see, yes, we have sales type. So let me here click on home and then I can refresh this data. Okay, so refresh first to get the new data, and then again click on the step, choose column, and again let me zoom in a bit to show you this is the symbol I mean that you have to click, to be able to edit this kind of step. Okay, and now again I'm going to search type and we can see that it's still not there, so that's not good. Sales, kind of strange. Let me go on the navigation before and see if it's there. It's also not there, so let's reload this. One sec. The problem is that we duplicated the query. Okay, so I kind of did a mistake. Reseller will be there because of the union, but internet sales will not be there because I duplicated the query. Okay, so we theoretically here we have to, my mistake, we have to add the column again. I'm kind of duplicating the work, so we just insert a step. So you have to make sure you're in the navigation step. Okay, so copy paste this here and call it internet sales, and then data type text, click OK. And then in the choose columns, the next step, we click again the, and now it should be there if I click type. Okay, so we also select type, then we click OK, and then we have the append, and after the append, click again the choose columns button, and make sure that we have sales type as well. Okay, so that the reseller sales type gets chosen. And now we can click the drop down. We can see here if we click load more that we have the two options between reseller type and internet sales, and that's it. We publish it again. So here on the bottom right, we click publish. So let's click publish. And then again, it will load the data into the Lakehouse, and we should in the Lakehouse then see the data. So let's just wait a minute until it's loaded. Okay, so the Dataflow has loaded. Let's click into the Lakehouse, have a look at the bridge table, and refresh it. And it should now show us the sales type. Let's have a look. Okay, we now see the sales type as well. Perfect. That's it for now. So now let's go into Power BI Desktop to connect to all the tables and create the data model. Okay, so in Power BI Desktop, let's connect to our data. Okay, so on the top left, you can see here there's a get data symbol. So let's click get data. It will give us a pop-up window. We click Microsoft Fabric and then Lakehouses because we have our data in a Microsoft Fabric Lakehouse. Click connect. I'm already signed in, so the connection will work. The important thing is that if you choose your Lakehouse, that you click this extend connect button to be able to connect to the SQL endpoint. Yeah, that's really important. Otherwise you won't be able to choose import mode. Okay, now we need our bridge table. So tutorial bridge table, that's the centerpiece of our data model. Then we choose our fact tables, which is reseller sales and internet sales. Then we have sales territory as a dimension. We have product as a dimension. We have date, we have customer, and I think that's it. So 1, 2, 3, 4 dimensions and 2 fact tables. And then we click on transform data, okay? Also a best practice, always click on transform data to open Power Query to transform our data. And then here we can see now that we have a connection. We choose import mode, click OK. And the reason I need to transform the data is because my product table has some blank product key values. Yeah, you can see here I have null values. This is a problem for the data model because if I have several columns with blank or null values, I will have to have a many-to-many relationship. I don't want that. I want a one-to-many relationship between the dimensions and the bridge table to make sure I have unique values. And this looks good. You can also see in the column profile, I think, column quality, that there are now no empty values. Yeah, we can check the same thing for the other dimensions, for the keys. The date key also fine, and the customer key is also fine. Yeah, so that's what we want. Then we have our bridge table. So let's have a look here. You can also see there are no empty values, so that looks perfectly good. And that's it. So we click on home, click close and apply, and let this load. Yeah, you can change here the table name if you want, but I'm going to keep everything as is. So let's click close and apply. And it will now load the data, as you can see. So this should be relatively fast because we don't have too much data, and we chose import mode in this case. Yeah. Okay, great. Great, so we have the data. Now we have to go into the data modeling view. That's on the top left here. You can see kind of diagram. We've got the new DAX query view, but let's click on data model view, and then we can see we have our data, our tables, but we need to adjust them a little bit to make it more visually appealing and to understand what we're actually doing. So you saw in the diagram earlier, I showed you in the slide that we have had both fact tables at the bottom. We had dimension date at the left hand side. We had the bridge table in the middle, and then we had all the other dimensions around it. So now we just have to create the relationship, okay? So let's start with our fact table. We should have sales order number. And we have sales order number, that's a text. So we will get a many-to-many relationship. As I mentioned, this is because our fact tables has multiple lines for the same sales order number. This shouldn't be the case for you, I hope. In your fact table, you should have a primary key that's actually unique. And then we do the same thing for the fact internet sales. Yeah. So again, sales order number with sales order number, again, many-to-many relationship. Bidirectional, that's the only thing that's important. And now we have date key with order date key. Yeah, one-to-many, and we will make it bidirectional. Okay, as I mentioned, all the relationships have to be bidirectional in this case. That's the only catch. And on the top, we should have a product key. We drag and drop it on top of product key. One-to-many between product key and tutorial table for the bridge table is fine. In the bridge table, we have multiple product keys, yeah, because the product key will appear multiple times. Then we have customer key on customer key. Again, bidirectional, cross-filter section. And then the final one, the sales territory key. Yeah, drag and drop that, and it will be bidirectional. And now we have a beautiful kind of star schema with one table in the middle, but instead of just having dimensions on the outskirts or on the outside of the fact table, in the middle, which is not really a fact table, it's more like a key bridge table, we also have our fact tables. Yeah. But you could consider this a star schema, I suppose. So let's go back to our report and create a table and see if this works, okay? So by checking if this works, we will simply drag and drop all the things that are interesting to us, yeah? So the first thing I want is the fiscal year. I don't want the sum, so do not summarize. Then from customer, I want to know whether the customer is a house owner, what the gender is, and how many children they have. I think that's also part of the information we get. Number of children at home and, well, number of cars owned. We can also see that. I suppose that's also interesting. And that's enough about the customers. Let's click on the product and let's see first the status of the product. There's no data there, so let's not. But the product line is important, okay, and the model name. So I want the product line, the model name, and that should be maybe the size of the product would be interesting, I suppose. Not really, okay, maybe not. The size doesn't really tell us anything. Okay, the product line is good enough. The product, then the sales territory. Okay, here it's interesting what country and region the stuff is being sold to. and then we have our fact internet sales and our fact reseller sales. Yeah, and for both of these we need the value. Now we will have different columns that will be blank or not blank. Yeah, we could join this, I guess, into a single column that will have simply sales, and we will know if it's internet or not by adding it, for example, to the bridge table. You can do that as well and turn it into a bridge fact table. But in this case I didn't. Okay, so the same thing that we did. Oh yeah, so of course important in the bridge table would be what sales type it is. Yeah, so we have internet sales or not internet sales. Okay, then let's get the stuff we need from the fact tables that are interesting to us. In this case, it would be the product price amount, the total product price. So let me just find this total product cost, sorry, and the sales amount. Yeah, and the same thing for the other fact table, sales amount. Okay, now we have duplicates. Okay, so this is not good. This is not a best practice. Yeah, you can see that we have okay, so we have some information missing for 2010 and the dimensions. So that's also not amazing. Oh, it's for certain products, but that's fine. But you can see here that we have total product cost and sales amount that is either blank or not blank, depending on whether it's internet or reseller sales. Okay, so to work around this, in theory, you could add these to the bridge table and create that union to have a single column. That would be very cool. Okay, so that's a step that we could do. But in this case, I guess I'm going to keep it this way. So I'll just rename this. I think the first one was reseller, so I'll put RSL. Okay, this looks like row RSL, and then the other one will be, I think, internet. Yeah. Okay, internet. I will put int underscore before the column name, so we just know which one belongs to which. And now, of course, because of the sales type, we can add a filter. Okay, and that's the main function that I want to show here, to be kind of able to tell a story. All right, so let's keep this a little bit shorter. I guess we could, okay, scroll to the right a little bit. So let's create that filter. So we want from the tutorial bridge table down here, yeah, I want the sales type. Click sales type. We have internet sales. See if that works. The filter works. Okay, and now we also want to see, so let me copy paste the filter, if any of the other filters work. So in product, let's see if I add I don't know, style, I guess not. Something actually interesting, size range. Let me see. Okay, if I have size range, and let's say I only want to see size L, that should now filter to all the products that have size L. We can't see this here, so because I haven't added it to the table. So let me get a dimension. So maybe house owner flag. Let me get house owner flag from the customer dimension as a filter. House owner flag. Okay, and we have blank. Yeah, so we have some missing data, but we have 0, which probably means is not a house owner, and then we have 1, which is a house owner. Okay, and now to be able to tell a story with our data, for example, to see the amount of internet sales versus total product sales, we would have to create a measure that actually contains the sales. Yeah, so we would need a single column for total product for both tables. We can do this kind of by just adding them together, I suppose, into a simple measure. Okay, so let's create that measure. The first thing we want to do is create the measure table. So let's click enter data and measures table, and we just click load, and this should load a blank table for us with a blank row. Okay, we can see this table down here, and let's click on it. Make sure you select the table, click new measure. Okay, so let's create our measure. In this case, it will be a coalesce between internet and reseller sum of the sales, so that we can unify this into a single measure. Click enter. Oh yeah, sorry. Internet sales, total internet sales, MSR for measure, doesn't matter. Just make sure it's unique. Okay. And then we can now, you see here at the measure table, right? If we click this, these three buttons, these three dots, we can click here, delete from model for the column 1, and this will transform the table into a measure table, okay? And then you can see it here at the top as a measure table, okay? So let's have a look here. That's also a best practice, just to make sure that we have a separately organized measure table for our measures. This also is only available in import mode in desktop because in Microsoft Fabric we cannot create a blank table yet. In the Lakehouse that only contains measures without any rows, you can without any columns. You can create a blank delta table, but it will need at least one column, so it will not be recognized as a measure table. For example, if you want to use direct lake mode. So unfortunately we are stuck with the total measure. Okay, so if we add it, it will be an incorrect value. As you can see here, it's 29 million, which is only oops, sorry, which is let me just get rid of this, which is the only the internet sales amount. Yeah, so there's the 80 million missing. So for totals this won't work, but if just for the purpose of this video, to actually tell a little story, if we add sales type, it will work. Yeah, it will recognize and the values will be correct. So right now, for example, we can see that the reseller amount is 80 million and the internet sales is 29 million. Yeah. And then of course you can play around with this even more. You can create dimensional data. So if we want to see how many of them own a house, let's click on the house owner flag. Okay, so we can see here, we can add it to the legend, for example. Let's say house owner flag legend, and then we can see that the reseller sales doesn't have this kind of data, but the internet sales does. Yeah, for internet sales, we know whether it's a house owner or not a house owner. Yeah, and then we can see, for example, gender, the same thing. Okay, the reseller sales doesn't seem to have this kind of data in the fact table. So that's interesting. Yeah, so that kind of limits the type of analysis we can do. Maybe let's take another dimension. So let's, for example, say product and add legend product line. I think this will be a lot. Yeah. But then again, there's a lot of blank values in the reseller sales. So the reseller sales is not delivering as much accurate data as we would like. You can still see that for the other product lines we have data. Yeah. And then you can kind of start telling stories, telling data stories. Yeah. See, the S seems to have the biggest total amount of sales. Particularly in reseller sales, there's a big gap. Yeah, so that's a little story we already told with the data. Okay, so let's just go back again to the data model, have a look at it. We can now see that we have our measure table, but here on the top left, but this is the data model. Okay, and we have the bridge table. So now we successfully created a multiple fact table model without having to duplicate any dimensions. Okay, so that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you understood how we can use a bridge table effectively to create a similar star schema model to connect multiple fact tables without having to duplicate dimensions, and how we can use this to create all the relationships and create some analytics on top of it and tell some data stories. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you on the next video, and please subscribe for more.